Hello, I'm so excited that you are here joining me for today's DIY project on how to paint these really adorable pumpkins that you can hang in your home this fall. So I recommend the supplies I love to use are in my beginner bundle box. Winsor Newton Cotman sets, and they're really awesome because they just open up and they become your travel kit. And it's every color that you will need to do this project. I do recommend adding one additional color, which is this Payne's Gray. It's not necessary for these projects, but I do love that color. So I have linked that at the bottom of this video. So go ahead and take a peek at that if you would like to purchase an additional paint color. Otherwise, just grab whatever paints you have at home will work just perfect, and grab whatever brushes you may have. I just love these brushes because they are very versatile. We'll only be using a few of my brushes that I have here today. So go ahead, grab your supplies, and we will get started. Okay, to begin, so I have my 8x10 is the size I'm working on, and it has my printed outline of the pumpkins already ready to go. I also have my paper towel, that's a must, a water cup, or some type of jar to hold your water, and your paint brushes, and then your paints. So go ahead and grab a medium-sized brush will be perfect. We want to start by laying in the foundation colors of our pumpkins. So lighter oranges, lighter washes of the blues, things like that. And that's where we're going to start. And then as we let that dry, we'll start to build the layers as you see here. And then eventually shape the pumpkins and add the shadow. Okay, to begin, I am just getting my brush really nice and wet, and I will start with the orange of the pumpkin. So again, any of your paints will work. I have an orange already in my set. I'm going to tone it down a little bit. It's very saturated. I also recommend having some type of scrap paper, or just at least having your paper towel. You can see the colors and how they're going to come out, and that is very orange. So I'm going to add a little bit of this ochre yellow. It's going to tone that down a little bit. Maybe even add a little bit of brown. Gives it more of a muted color. A lot of water, not as much paint. I want to just start with lighter washes, building the pumpkin out. So lightly brushing, pressing down a little bit harder if I wanted a thicker stroke. So that's a lot of paint on the paper. I'm just going to dab more water on my brush and then swipe it again. I really want to get rid of some of that color. I'm working in lighter layers. Like I said, I will build them up as they dry. So just go ahead, work around the pumpkins. That outline is there to help guide you. So I'm just going to draw down on each of those lines. I'm actually going to leave some areas white. So I'm just going to make the outline of the pumpkin here. Just adding a little water and paint. The more paint you have on the brush, the more saturated your pumpkin, meaning vibrant, your pumpkin is going to get. Sunshine's starting to peek out here. It's been really rainy, so I may have to shut my blinds a little bit. I like keeping the blinds open though. Natural light is always the best way to paint. You can paint at night. If you can get that beautiful Saturday or Sunday morning light, there's nothing better on the weekends than starting out with a painting project. This project will take us probably about 30 minutes. So again, if I wanted to soak any color up, I'm just making sure I have a clean brush and I'm swiping it along there. Of course, it doesn't look like much. Watercolor is one of those things that you have to really be patient as we build up the layers. Okay, let's build up the layers of our bluish pumpkins. So I am going to be adding a blue pumpkin on the left side and the right side, here and there. For that one, I like to use my blue here. If you have a little bit of a turquoisey green, add that in there too. It's kind of the grayish blue pumpkin that everybody's loving in their home decor because it goes with everything. Another great tip, again, I said that I love that Payne's Gray. It really helps neutralize that color so it's not so bright. Okay, again, I have a very little paint and water on my brush. I'm just going to begin by doing the same process. So it broke up there. That just means I need more water on my brush. I still want more water. It's very saturated. I'm just following those guided lines to try and shape my pumpkin here. I just wanted to leave some of that white on the pumpkins so that we are able to see highlights. So it doesn't take much paint at all. I never picked up any paint again on this one. Okay, same process, maybe a little less paint even. I want this pumpkin to be even whiter over here. I'm able to really get a fine line with this brush because of how round it is and pointed of a tip. It's really, really great for that. So I'm just really more water and less paint on my brush, drawing those lines down. And maybe I'll just add a little bit of water and whatever paint I have on my brush. So dab it. I have very little paint I'm working with. It's just whatever little residue is on there, it's pulling that color around. You can always add more. You can't really take it away. Just always remember that little tip. Okay. I see that I forgot another little orange pumpkin over here. So let's jump back to that one. Sorry about that. This one I want it to be a little bit more of a vibrant orange pumpkin. So to do that, it's just more paint on my brush and I'm not really adding any other neutral color to it. So like drawing, be really careful because if it touches the wet here, it's going to bloom into that other pumpkin. So I'm just kind of outlining areas. This one might not use as much. So you see how that bloomed right there? That was an oops. Or people like that technique. If you want to leave that and that happens to you, great. I don't want to, so I'm just going to mop it up with my brush and that takes care of it. Only while it's wet, so get to it before it dries. Okay. This one I think could use a little less of the white. Okay, let's start building these pumpkins up that we have currently in before we add the foreground pumpkins. I'm gonna hop back to my big central pumpkin. It's definitely mostly dry now. I want to add a layer of a really orangey yellow. So again, it's orange and then mostly yellow. And I am going to, again, same type of process, but this layering technique is going to start to shape our pumpkin. Just following the guides that I have lined out in this project. Like that. I think I might even shape it around here. Using mostly water. Coming around the top one and around the edge. Can use a little bit more down here too, I see. So orange and the yellow. All right, so that's a really saturated color I just made there. Probably a little too orange. So I just like to pick up more, once I lay the paint on the paper, I like to pick up more water and I can really push that paint around. You can even add a little more color up to the top because that's where some shadowy areas are to give it more 3D. But we will again come back again with another layer to shape it. I'm gonna hit it with a few more colors. This is too white. Okay. If you don't like always these, you can just smooth it out with water. Let's do the same process over here. That pumpkin may still be wet for you. I'm going to use more of a deeper color. So I have my orange, but then I'm also going to add a little bit of brown to make that a deeper orange. See how that worked there? Okay, and now I am just going to outline it. So that helps give the pumpkin shape. Now I want to smooth out those lines, so I'm going to take water only. A nice technique is I like to wring it out inside of my cup like that, or you can dab it on your paper towel. And then we're just going to smooth those lines out. Too much water in my brush. That. Make sure that you don't paint in all of the areas that you want to keep light. You cannot go back. So just work slow. Stop this video at any point that you just need to either practice on a different piece of paper or go at your own pace. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to our blue pumpkins. I am going to use a little bit more of a grayish blue. If you need that grayish blue, what you can do is use a little bit of your blue and mix it with some red. We'll give it more of that purple, and then even some orange. A little hint starts to give it more of that gray. I'm going to outline again. Your lines will start to fade, the printed outline. So just kind of remember where your lines are. If you start to lose them, the point of them is to have them disappear as you begin to paint more and more. Add more layers. So I am going to just smooth that out again with some water. Like that. Now the side that's touching your pumpkin here, that can be darker. You may even want to go back and pick up some more of your darker grayish color, and you can drop that in with that wet on wet technique, so then it'll start to expand in there. My best advice is to make sure that you don't have too much water and paint on your brush at any given time. That's how you'll have more control. Like that. So we'll shape that pumpkin one more time before we say that one's done. I'm going to do the same for over here. That one I'm trying to keep a little bit wider. So let's get rid of all the paint on our brush now that we just made that outline, and I will smooth it out like that. Add a little bit to the lower half too. It's kind of just coloring in the lines here. If that's too much and you don't like that look, just grab more water and we're going to soak it up. All right, let's build up our middle pumpkin with one more layer. This is how watercolor works. It works with a lot of patience. I am going to use some red color on this one. Red mixed with some browns. And then even a little bit of blue to get it even richer. All right, I really like that color. So again, let's start outlining our pumpkin grooves. I think I need more orange. It was too brown. So just color in those lines. Being careful to work around those foreground pumpkins that we'll come back to. Okay, so let's use that paint and let's shape it again, using mostly water and pulling it out. Like that. No more paint, just pulling out the paint that I have on my paper. You may find that you have these textures that you really like, which I do here, so I'm trying really hard not to overwork that area. Before we go to our other pumpkin, I want to drop in a little more color. So again, I'm grabbing my same darker reddish orange color. And because this area is wet, it's going to expand and smooth out on its own, which is really what I want. So your pumpkin's going to be the darkest at the bottom and the top, since it's like a sphere with textures. So I'm just touching the top and working those down like that. Now we can go through this process in many rounds. Eventually you'll decide that this is as dark as you want to make your pumpkin. But have fun with it. It doesn't have to be looking just like mine. I think I'm going to stop there. I can see adding a little bit of blues at the bottom. Let's hop over to our other pumpkin. I think I want to bring in a little bit of yellow, so I am going to grab more yellow. It's just going to layer and make it a nice richer tone. Now that was way too much paint. Grabbing more water and just highlighting some of those areas before I go back and shape my pumpkin. It was a lot of yellow, but I didn't fill the whole pumpkin yet. It'll make more sense when I go back to shape it. I can see this one is going to need one more layer. Once this dries, I'll have more control over that. Okay, so let's finish shaping our blue pumpkins. See how this one's expanding out? I don't want that. I'm just taking my brush and I am wiping it away. I kind of like the look of it, almost like it's reflecting a shadow onto the other white pumpkin, so that's okay. I will now grab a little bit of this turquoisey color along with the blue, and that's what I'll use. I'm going to add a little Payne's Gray into mine just to make it darker. If you want to make it darker, add the reds and the oranges to mute it. And this is where we will draw. I say draw even though it's paint, but it's just more so drawing it with lines to help shape those lines on the pumpkin here. And I'm just going to leave more of that darker shadow over here. Now you may like the way that looks, or you may want to smooth it out. I'll leave that one up to you. I think I'm gonna leave almost all of it. I might just grab a little more water with my current paintbrush and then smooth out the top. Like that. And the bottom. Shaping out the bottom edges. Like that. All right, I'm going to leave that one as is. I like the way that looks. Using that grayish blue we made. And just shaping out the bottom half of this pumpkin. I think that's all that one really needs. Maybe a little tiny bit at the top. Okay, that's too big of a block of color. I'm just going to fix that with a little water. Let's shape our orange pumpkins one last time. So I need an even darker color than what I made in the previous round. So with that, I am grabbing more of the brown. I think what I'll do is actually add a hint of the blue, and you'll see how that really makes it more of an umbery brown color, but it has the undertones of the orange. And that should really help us. You can also use a little bit of a red and blue mixture. Makes it a purple, which is always a pretty mixture with the browns. Okay, so again, I'm going to just use that to outline. Like that. There's going to be more shadow down here where that pumpkin's laying in front of it. Now again, I think I need more of that color. So the blue, red, orange. And I'm going to shape the bottom of the pumpkin like that. All right, I like how dark that got. It makes it a little more lifelike. Just outlining around where that pumpkin goes. Adding a little more water because I just have so much paint on my brush. Okay, I think that one is perfect. Let's use that same color on our other pumpkin, even though that one's a little more orangey or yellowy, excuse me. Just going to use this to outline the grooves. You may not want to outline the entire outside of this pumpkin, but like that is perfect. That one may need more undertones of actual orange. I'm looking at it and it's not enough orange, so I'm just going to pick up the pure orange I have in my palette, a little bit lighter with more water, and then I'm going to add that in there. Too much paint, so let's mop it up. Okay. Do maybe a little bit more of that here. I like those muted orange pumpkins, but I think I just wanted a little bit more orange. So you can always add light layers after. Okay, let's hop to the front pumpkins. So this one will be so fun. It's a speckly pumpkin. So it's going to be actually very easy. Let's start with the specklies that are yellow. Hope you don't mind, I call them specklies. I am just using the yellow to kind of dot down along where those grooves would go. It's very loose. It does. This part is fun because there's no perfection here of any kind. So while that is still wet, I'm just going to dab my paintbrush with a little bit of orange and add those into a few of those spots that we just made. So while that dries, we can add a layer, or after that dries, we'll add a layer to shape it. Last but not least, this is like a gourd, so it's going to have a green bottom and then a yellow gold top. Let's start with the green. So I have a really nice green in my palette already ready to go. I'm just going to start with that one right away. It's a really lighter green. Use that to make like a nice wash on the bottom half to about here, I'd say. And I'm just going to use more water. And it's nice if you can leave some white of the paper, like that. Now let's get a clean brush and let's pick up some type of a golden color that you have. Yellows can be really bright, so you have to be careful. Unless you just really want a really light and bright top to your gourd here. So I'm going to let those blend and touch like that. I love that look where they bloom. So now I need to wait and let those pumpkins dry before I can add layers and shape them like we did with our other pumpkins. So let's do the stems while we wait. I will use that same green color that I have. It's just a nice base layer. If you have another green to make it a little bit darker, that may help too, but you really just want that first nice base layer. Now that's really bright. If I didn't want such a like candy green color, I would add a little bit of brown to that, and that's going to help neutralize that color, make it much more natural looking. Again, this is just the base layer of the stem, so I'm painting down, and I'll do that for all my stems. And then we'll come back and shape those. Like that. While this is still wet on the stems, I'm going to use a darker green. So depending on the green you have, you can use the same green, but then to make it darker, I like to add either, you can add a Payne's gray, or you can add the darker brown that you might have in your palette. A blue would also help. And then I am just going to draw on the right side of the stem and along the bottom. That's going to help give it some dimension. Maybe one stroke down the middle. Now this one I'm going to paint on the left. I need more. So because the stems are still wet, it's blooming on the inside, and I really like that look, and I love when they blend into the bottom of the pumpkin. So again, just pick a side of your stem, and that helps highlight it, give it more dimension. You may even want to add a curlicue. You can even get more creative and add some leaves onto your pumpkin stems. Okay, that was a lot of green up there. I'm just going to soak it up. It'll just create like a darker looking color, and then I can just work that way down the pumpkin like that. Okay, let's finish our two pumpkins up front here. I actually am going to use a little bit of green because sometimes those speckly pumpkins can have hints of green in them too. So I am grabbing that same lighter green with a little bit of brown to make it more of a neutral color. And then I am going to shape real lightly, so I'm barely touching the paper, that pumpkin. And I'm really just touching the tops and the bottom. And that's probably all I'll do. If I want to add some more depth, I may just grab some of this darker orange color that we did and also add it to the bottom of the pumpkin. Helps ground it a little bit more. Okay, so the gourd, let's grab a medium toned green. So something similar to how we layered the top of our stem. So this is where we want to kind of draw some of our own lines like this. And you can even bring that green all the way to the top to help give it dimension, and on the outside there. And then you can smooth it out. I'm just going to add more water and try and smooth it out a little bit better so it's not so chunky there. That one is going to take at least one more layer of a darker greenish blue to help define it. As you see here, really helps to define the gourd on the front. So let's let that dry, and we will come back and finish the gourd, and then we'll add the shadow. And then depending on if you like the way it looks with the shadow, you can always add more to the bottom of your pumpkins to really ground the pumpkins. Okay, so I'm just grabbing more of that turquoisey green blue color. I need to make it a little bit darker, so maybe some orange colors or red. Like that. So I'm just painting along the edges of the gourd like that. And then I'm just going to speckle, add little dots going up like that. You can go a little into the yellow part. Okay, let's add the shadow. I'm still working with my medium-sized brush. I did this entire painting with this brush. That's what I love about these brushes, to be honest. They just really are versatile because you can go with really thick and really thin with that really pointed top. Okay, so I think a little bit of this Payne's Gray, if you have that, otherwise any type of blue color neutralized with some type of red or orange is going to help really gray that out, kind of how we did, make it more natural. Okay, so I have mostly water and a little, see how washed out that color is on my palette? Mostly water with a little bit of paint. That is what you need for the shadow. So to begin, doesn't matter where you really start in your painting, let's just start adding that color. So that's really stark. Now I'm going to pick up more water and smooth it out. Let's just add the wet base layer here, and then we can go back. You want to extend your shadow a little bit outside of your pumpkins. Then we can go back and drop in more color. And this will help us decide if we need to add more to the ground of our pumpkins. So you can kind of go a little bit above, like it's sitting down on the ground, and then paint it out like that. So I like the way that looks. While it's still wet, I'm going to grab more color. So Payne's Gray, or your darker reddish, with your red and your blue and your browns or oranges. That'll help gray that color out. And I am going to line the pumpkins again, and that is going to bleed into the shadow. Like that. If you ever feel like you have too much paint, you can always take your paper towel or some type of clean sponge and you can mop it up. I don't know if I needed to mop up quite that much, but at least a really cool texture. So I'll just take more color and drop it back in there again. From there, you can decide how you would like to shape your pumpkins. So once it dries, maybe take a step back or come back the next day and evaluate if it needs any more shaping. I could see that mine could use a little more shaping up top now that that green expanded into there, but it's up to you if you love the look and style of how this how the pumpkins turned out. Great. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I would love to see your paintings. Please tag me on Instagram, mostly Instagram. Otherwise, if you have Facebook, tag me there too, Windswept Design Studio. If you have any questions, please send me an email or go ahead and leave a comment on this video and I will get back to you. I can't wait to see your pumpkins. I know you'll do great. Thanks so much.